This meeting is being recorded.
I've been thinking about this a lot, obviously over the past 2 days, and I'm sure many of you, like me, even had trouble sleeping last night. And I just want to acknowledge that it's not an easy day today. Yesterday wasn't easy. I'm really angry and exhausted. As the civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. It's not a normal day, and so I want to acknowledge that. I'm also really heartbroken, and in times like these, there really aren't any words to share. But to start the meeting, I just wanted to read a little poem. I'm kind of a sap and love some poetry, so I just wanted to share a little poem that I found that gave me a little bit of encouragement, and I hope it does you too. It's called "How Do We Go On" by John Mark Green. How do we go on after the unthinkable happens? How can we carry the burden of knowing the world can be cruel and dangerous, the future so unpredictable? How do we give and grieve with empty arms and a head filled with echoing memories? We are stronger than we know, and this is how we show it. Holding each other, giving comfort in the midst of pain, loving more fiercely through our actions and the things we say, making the world just a bit better every single day. Never taking life for granted, knowing that it can be snatched away. This world may bring deep darkness, but we are the bearers of light. We'll join our flames together and shine in the blackest of nights. That poem gave me encouragement, and I hope it does you too, because we are all bearers of light today. Because I really do believe that now more than ever, we really need to support folks who have chosen a profession that serves the youngest and most vulnerable among us. So again, really thank you for being here today. I want to acknowledge our incredible partners from around the federal family and beyond who have made this happen, particularly our friends at the Department of Labor Women's Bureau, who partnered with us a couple months ago as we started to brainstorm about this session. And specifically, big thanks to the Women's Bureau's regional administrators, Kelly Jenkins-Poltz and Roxanne Griffith for their support. And also a big thanks to Regional Administrator Frank Sluka from the Department of Labor Employee Training Administration, as well as to the Technical Assistance Centers who have made and supported this work at the Capacity Building Center and the Early Childhood Quality Assurance Center for making this happen. It's a whole alphabet soup of people that really care about young kids. And so I've been really pleased to work with all of them. And I'm very excited to really welcome my Region 6 colleague, Lakeisha Pope-Jackson, who is my partner in crime. She lives and works in Dallas, and I wanted to turn it over to her for some brief opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Pete, and welcome to everyone. I really appreciate the words that were spoken earlier, Pete, and it's true, happening right here in our home state of Texas. Our hearts are truly broken, and we just don't know how long it's going to take for us to get over it. But it is something that we will continue to hopefully use as we look for brighter days and how we can actually benefit the children of our country and what that looks like for us. We are so grateful to be a part of this presentation. We are very happy to have our partners here. Pete, as you know, Region 6 and Region 9, we walk hand in hand in many things, and we're really glad to be able to do this work with you. It is our pleasure to have so many Region 6 representatives attending, and really glad that you all will be able to participate. I hope you all can appreciate the time frame. I know that was intentional, and we just are really glad that so many people were able to join. So Pete, I'm going to hand it back over to you. You're doing a wonderful job. I could not have said it more eloquently. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakeisha. Really appreciate your support and our ongoing partnership. And like Lakeisha mentioned, we put this at an awkward hour for some, so we really appreciate those that are joining in the evening in the East Coast. But of course here it's, just the mid-afternoon and Pacific time. We also wanted to make sure that we could accommodate our friends in the Pacific territories as well, where it is not Wednesday afternoon or evening, but Thursday morning. So just wanted to welcome them as well. So as you already know, we'll be recording this session as well as the subsequent breakout groups. And we have some awesome breakout groups for you to attend. So that will come in a little bit. But first, I wanted to introduce a very special guest, someone who I've gotten to know over the past year and am honored to call her my colleague, someone who spent their life working to advance the health and well-being of young kids and families, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Early Childhood Development. So I'll welcome my friend, Katie Ham.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for those words, Pete and Lakeisha. I think we all have heavy hearts today. And here at the ACF Central Office, we are just sending all of our love and hope, especially to our colleagues in Texas today. So thank you all. So I'm going to start by just framing up our conversation a little bit today. If we want to go to the first slide, this chart kind of shows the crux of our problem. We had a tenuous, chronically underfunded early childhood workforce pre-pandemic that was characterized by low wages, by high turnover as a result, lack of investment, lack of career trajectory that was kind of provided within the field. We now find ourselves in an even worse place in that we have lost 11% of our workforce as compared to pre-pandemic levels. So what that means is that we're missing 1 in 10 childcare providers. And that means we don't have enough space to meet the needs of families. And we know even before the pandemic, childcare was in short supply. So we've done a few of these regional convenings that allow people to really come together across different sectors and talk about how to tackle this issue in your community, in your state, and are hoping we can do the same thing today. Next slide. I noticed in the chat, somebody's saying the numbers are much higher. They are very variable across states and communities. So that's not to discount anything that you're experiencing, but that's what the national numbers show us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the American Rescue Plan, if you want to go to the next slide, and some of the resources that are available to help tackle this problem. So over the last year, the Childcare Stabilization grants have gone out to childcare providers. That's $24 billion in funds. And in nearly every state, those funds are going out to providers to help them with their operational costs and the kind of ups and downs of closures that they continue to experience. States also have $15 billion in CCDF, or Childcare and Development Fund, supplemental funds. Those are really flexible funds that can be used for any purpose of the Childcare and Development Fund. And that includes things like investing in wages and bonuses and supporting the pipeline of early childhood providers. So as we're talking today, I really encourage you to think about that resource that states have and how you might come together to help your state think about how to use those resources most effectively to tackle this problem. There's also $1 billion in Head Start that can also support wages, bonuses, and staff retention efforts. And many of you are in partnership with Head Start. Some of you might represent Head Start programs. So that's another funding source to think about. Next slide. So we have been thinking here at ACF about our vision for the early childhood workforce and how we can kind of support movement towards this vision. Compensation is central to everything. If we cannot pay people, if people can make $3 or $4 more an hour in retail or food service, if the K-12 system is pulling teachers who are qualified because they have bachelor's degrees to teach in elementary schools or serve as teachers assistants in elementary schools, the school system pays more. So we really have to focus on compensation as a strategy here. Building the pipeline of effective early educators, that's really central to make sure we're continuing to recruit strong people into the field. Maintaining diversity. The early childhood field is 40% women of color. That is a huge strength of this workforce. It means we are more able to provide culturally and linguistically responsive care to children. And it's important that we maintain that as we move forward, so that all children, especially those in historically underserved communities, have access to great early educators. And last but not least, we want high quality practices. We want to make sure that our early childhood workforce is effective and have those skills that allow them to really support young children and their families. Next slide. So we have been trying to leverage what we have in the federal government across HHS, across Department of Labor and the Department of Education to really support efforts to build up this early childhood workforce and support them in the way that they deserve. We published a Dear Colleague letter last fall that outlined some of the specific ways that states can use their ARP funds and to some extent their preschool development grants, depending on your state needs assessment and what you have in the pipeline there, to really execute on some of these strategies. So it includes things like increasing childcare subsidies, addressing wages and bonuses, staff wellness, benefits. So definitely check that out. There's also a great resource with states that have implemented some of these strategies. If you want to learn from another state or use it as a proof point that it can be done, or maybe a neighboring state has tried it and that helps build some political will in your state. Next slide. We also have a website. It's a rapid response TA collaborative. You can check out this website for resources on all different types of strategies to address the early childhood workforce shortage and improve the overall job conditions of the early childhood workforce. There's also a monthly webinar and a monthly e-blast with ongoing resources, both from HHS and from third parties that you might find useful. Next slide. You can go on. Thanks. We're also looking at what are the benefits that already exist that we can make sure early childhood providers are connected with. So we had a targeted week of action in November to get early childhood providers connected to public health insurance programs like Medicaid and CHIP, but also look at the healthcare marketplaces and the subsidies that many early childhood providers are eligible for. Next slide. We also had an extremely popular webinar last month where we partnered with the Department of Education on public service loan forgiveness. So early educators at nonprofit organizations or public schools or government institutions are likely qualify for public service loan forgiveness, depending on the specific nature of their loans. So we've been trying to get the word out. This is a time-limited flexibility until October of this year. So we've really been trying to get the word out to Head Start, to our childcare community, to make sure that people can apply for the benefit that they are potentially eligible for. Next slide. So just want to kind of leave on with the purpose of our coming together today. We want to give people a platform to increase knowledge about federal funding and the resources that we have to help address the workforce shortage. We also want to highlight promising strategies, especially those that are specific to your region, and facilitate the exchange of ideas and lessons learned. You all are the experts on what works in your communities, in your states, and you can sometimes borrow from your neighbors. So want to provide that platform and make sure we can have that really robust exchange of ideas. So I want to thank you all for joining the webinar today. I know you have a lot of competing demands. I know especially for our colleagues in Texas, this is a very heavy day. So I want to thank Pete, Lakeisha, and Kim for all the work that they did in putting this together and for the kind introduction. With that, I will turn it over to Wendy Chung Hoon, who's the director of the Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor. She has been a great partner in this work. The Secretary of the Department of Labor has really been an amazing partner as well in highlighting this. So Wendy, I will turn it over to you to share.
Thank you, Katie. And also want to just express my appreciation to Pete and Lakeisha for opening the way that you did and holding us together today. It actually does feel like a family. Katie and I were on a different webinar together today talking about apprenticeships in the early ed and early care space. So that was fun, but we really are trying to organize ourselves and our resources to be of greatest support to the field right now. So thank you for having me here. It feels good. And, you know, I really with all of you, because what Katie just said is right. Like you are closest to the solutions in your communities. You're the ones that are innovating, you know, at the city and state level and advancing some of the strategies that we know work. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I know that we always say this, and I absolutely think it bears repeating. COVID really underscored how threadbare our care infrastructure is. You know, access to affordable and quality care is a critical, fundamental to our successful economic recovery. And that's especially true for women. Part of what the Department of Labor does every month, we call it Jobs Day, is we look at the numbers, right? And Katie talked about that, you know, 1 in 10 early care providers we are still down 1 in 10 for this workforce. Other jobs numbers have rebounded, but we are still also down 1.6 million women. So that is well short of a full recovery. A lot of those who have left the labor force over the course of the pandemic did so because we're providing care for our kids. Even prior to the pandemic, many of our families faced difficulties securing affordable childcare. So all of these things have just been amplified by the pandemic, as we all know. Part of our data team at the Women's Bureau routinely looks at how many disruptions are still happening in childcare, school settings, aftercare settings. And so as recently as April, so this is last month, 3.7 million women reported that their child had had a disruption in childcare in the previous month. So this is still very much with us. And these kinds of disruptions mean, you know, millions have not been able to go back to work or start a new job. So I think part of, you know, my role in context setting and really being a partner with the Administration for Children and Families and all of you is that these issues are absolutely connected, right? So we've got on the one hand, our really insufficient care infrastructure, absolutely impacting women's labor force participation. And Katie said this, we recognize that our care workforce is predominantly women and largely women of color. So, you know, in the early part of the pandemic, women were seeing much more negative employment effects than men, in part because women are overrepresented in occupations and industries that had some of the greatest job losses, like the care sector. So I will also end with the obvious. We have underinvested in our care infrastructure for generations. We have relied on unpaid and underpaid work of women, and particularly women of color, to care for our loved ones. And we know, I think we all agree on this call, we need significant investments to support the kind of sustainable and long-term solutions in the care sector that Katie was talking about at the outset. In terms of those goals, and really ensuring that childcare workers, early ed providers are compensated fairly and are able to earn a living wage, and really, you know, for the critical work that they do to support all of our families. So with that, I will now hand it over to our next speaker, who is Caitlin McLean, who serves as the Director of Multi-State and International Programs at the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment at UC Berkeley.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all today. Unfortunately, as we've heard already today, the problems that we face in the early childhood education and care field are dire. We know that early childhood educators every day face poverty, food insecurity, and oppression at rates far above other workers and other teachers. Working in childcare is actually one of the worst paying jobs that you can have in this country. Our center's Early Childhood Workforce Index report has consistently shown that almost all other occupations, 98%, according to our most recent report, earn more than childcare teachers. And as a result, early childhood educators face poverty rates on average nearly 8 times higher than poverty rates for K-8 teachers. And as Wendy noted, these facts are particularly appalling when you consider that nearly all early childhood educators are women, and a high proportion are women of color. So raising compensation in early care and education is a matter of equity. Current poverty level wages perpetuate and exacerbate gender and racial injustice that is pervasive across our society. And as dire as the situation was, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, we know, of course, that this crisis has only gotten worse. Educators have been expected to risk their health and the health of their families in exchange for so little compensation that they must routinely rely on food stamps and other forms of public assistance just to get by. At the same time, they have watched as wages have risen in fast food, in retail, in other service industries, in response to labor shortages that have long affected our own field, a field that has been powerless to make comparable wage increases without further burdening the families that rely on them every day, families who are also in crisis. And we know that many of these educators who love what they do in service of young children have left the field entirely, while others are planning to do so. Recent evidence from Louisiana found a decrease in educators' intentions to stay in early care and education between 2019 and 2020. So in the span of 1 year, the percentage of teachers who agreed they would remain at their site, even just over the next 6 months, dropped 13 percentage points. And those agreeing that working in early care and education was their long-term career decreased by 7 percentage points. So by 2020, only about 2/3 of center-based teachers thought it was very likely that they would still be at their site even in 6 months. And less than half thought it very likely they would be there in 3 years. So it's not an exaggeration to say that our field is in dire straits. But this crisis and early educators' poor working conditions are not inevitable. They're a product of policy choices that over decades have consistently let down the women who are doing this essential work. The good news is that there have been recent efforts from the federal to the local levels to help stem the tide, even as we know much more needs to be done. With American Rescue Plan and other COVID relief funds, many states and localities have jumped at the opportunity to invest in their early care and education workforce. From our own research centers database, as well as other resources tracking these efforts, we know that over half the states are using federal relief funds intentionally to support educators and to help relieve their immense financial stress. We know that states have been using stabilization grant funding to either require or incentivize programs to use funds to increase wages, increase access to benefits, or to provide bonuses. For example, Minnesota required that 70% of their stabilization grant funds be used for some kind of compensation. We also know that many states have been paying short-term bonuses or stipends direct to educators, really to relieve, again, the immense financial stress that educators are under. And we've also seen innovations like Washington State temporarily paying the health insurance premiums of childcare teachers, understanding that too many educators lack access to critical healthcare services. So these and other efforts have been a lifeline, providing essential short-term financial relief for many educators and programs. And while it shouldn't be a surprise, given this crisis, that so many states are using relief funding explicitly for workforce compensation, we need to recognize that this is a major shift. For far too long, early educators have not been a priority in policy decisions, and it shows. It's why we're in the crisis we are today. But even these recent efforts are not nearly enough. These important federal funds were designed for relief, not reform. And so going forward, we must invest significant funding in our early childhood workforce to provide the compensation and professional working conditions they need. And we must also invest in our data systems so that we can understand the impact of these and future funds on the workforce, and so that we can both identify and disrupt the inequities that we know exist even within early care and education for communities of color, for immigrant communities, tribal communities, and others who make up an essential component of our diverse early childhood educator workforce. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Really appreciate that. And I've always been frankly obsessed and passionate about the work that you and your colleagues do at the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment just across the bay from us. So thank you, I really appreciate it. Next, and last but certainly not least, before we head to our breakout rooms, I want to introduce somebody pretty special, someone whose reputation precedes her and in the best way possible. I want to introduce Jaleetha Mcdonald, but I'll read a quick bio of hers because she's got an incredible resume. She's a national speaker and a family childcare consultant specializing in leadership, advocacy, and business development for family childcare executives. Jaleetha is the founder and president of Adfw Family Childcare Network and is the current senior manager of membership and volunteer affairs for the National Association for Family Childcare. Jaleetha has a bachelor's degree in child development and family studies and a minor in early childhood intervention from Stephen F. Austin State University. And she owned and operated a family childcare center, Nurturing Gifts Infant and Toddler Center for 15 years. Jaleetha was recognized by the Grand Prairie NAACP as one of the most influential women in business. In 2018, she was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott and his Early Learning Council to represent family childcare providers in Texas. And in 2020, she received the North Texas Early Childhood Leadership Award from Childcare Associates. She's pretty great. So without further ado, let's give it a virtual round of applause for Jaleetha.
Oh, thank you so much, Pete. Thank you for those wonderful words. And before I get started, I am from Texas, and I want to give a heartfelt condolences to the parents in the community that was affected by the terrible tragedy that happened, and also to the early childhood educators who are educating children and caring for children in those areas. My heart goes out to you. And our friends at Childcare Aware just released some things that you can do, or things that you can do in your childcare centers to talk with your children about. So check that out, because this is a very important time, and my heart goes out to all of you guys. And so, but I just want to say thank you guys for the invitation to speak today. And I just want to speak a little bit about my family childcare network. And I'm going to tell you why. I have a family childcare network. It's called ADFW Family Childcare Network. We are a professional development network for family childcare educators. We have center directors and owners as part of our membership as well. We focus on leadership, advocacy, financial literacy, business development, and community service. We focus on those things because all that comes down to economic mobility for the family childcare provider. We are all about making sure that family childcare providers in our network are financially sound and they can run high quality, sustainable businesses. And so that's why we focus on those key areas. But moving forward, I want to talk about solutions. We have family childcare providers and center owners and directors. We have griped for years about the problems and the issues that we have in our industry. But now it is time. It is time to move forward with solutions. Why? Because we have the funding to do it. Yes, the funding is temporary, right? But we need to come up with creative, innovative ways to make sure that funding lasts. And what I'm talking about, so states, what states can do, and I'm going to talk about my state, the great state of Texas. What we have decided to do with our stabilization grants is invest in business coaching. We have business coaches for family childcare providers, and we have business coaches for center owners and directors that they can call their business coaches and get best business practices free of charge. And we also have family childcare networks. I'm so excited to see what agencies will be our new family childcare networks in our state, and they will focus on family childcare businesses and how to elevate and push family childcare forward. We're also coming out with expansion grants. Those expansion grants will help with our childcare deserts, and also help with providers who want to expand in the infant toddler realm. So that's what we're doing on state, and a lot of other things that our state is doing. And I'm so proud of our state for leading this initiative and asking area family childcare providers and childcare directors what we want to do, what we need. And also locally, our local areas have stepped up. And I'm just going to be specific. My local area of Tarrant County, we are using $43 million to invest in the early child care landscape. And we're also investing in expansion for infant and toddler, help with providers becoming quality in the state of Texas. That's Texas Rising Star. So making sure that providers become quality and in improving our quality system for all providers on the quality system. And then also at community. So that's where I come in at, right? Making sure mentoring and making sure that family childcare providers have the education and the advocacy and the leadership tools that they need to speak at all tables. Making sure that family childcare providers in my area, in my network, are well informed and that are able to speak at forums like this. Making sure that they are able to break down barriers. I want to tell you a little story. Just a while ago, providers in my network that live in the city of Grand Prairie made sure that they use their voice and they use their voice to advocate for themselves. And for 42 years in the city of Grand Prairie, childcare centers family childcare homes weren't able to become licensed homes. And so what that is, a registered home and licensed home. A registered home, you can keep up to 6 children, and a licensed home, you can keep up to 12 children. And so that was a barrier for them, stopping them from their economic mobility, right? And stopping them from receiving the federal dollars the amount that they well deserve to receive. So what they did was wrote a letter. They attended city council meetings. We called on our national partners, and now that 42-year-old ordinance is now gone, and providers in the city of Grand Prairie are able to expand their family childcare business. And also they're able to care for more children and also help out our economy. We have a growing economy in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And so that is where I come in at. That is where my organization comes at, to elevate the voice of early childhood educators, that they can do it, and they can and they will sit at all tables. That is state, local, state, and federal tables, saying what they need, what they want, and how we want it. And so my advice, my word of encouragement to all the early childhood educators on this call: you can do it. I have done it, and you can do it too. You can create your own tables, your own networks, and design your own platforms specifically for your entities, your family childcare networks, your childcare center networks. You can do it. Your voice is needed, and your voice will be heard. Your voice is your currency. So we're going to continue to break down barriers. We're going to continue to use our voice, and we're going to continue to elevate each other, because we are the workforce behind the workforce, and there's no economic recovery without us. And that state agencies and local childcare agencies need us, and we need them too. And one more thing I want to leave you with: this is how powerful you are. You are a woman in business. We employ other women, and we make it possible for women and men to return to work. And so, like I said before, we are a viable part of the U.S. Economy, and we always have been, and we always will, and we have always been essential, and we will remain essential. So thank you all for having me. I'm Jaleetha Mcdonald.
Jaleetha, everybody told me you were inspiring, and they were right. Thank you so much for those remarks and comments. I just wrote it down. There is no economic recovery without childcare providers. That is so true. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we're all going to learn so much more in the breakout sessions that we're going to get started pretty much right now. So you got a little information in the registration form about these breakout sessions. We won't do too much advertising on them. I think that they're pretty self-explanatory, but I'm really excited to get in and get the discussion going. I'm really encouraged that all of you have already liberally used the chat. Continue to liberally use the chat, especially in your breakout rooms. We really want to encourage an authentic dialogue back and forth. This is a listening time and it's a learning time. So we want to hear about those best practices and how you can implement them to make them work for you. So our first breakout session is professional development, education, and career pathways. We have a great facilitator there, Siobhan Braden. Also in session B, we've got recruitment, retention, and staff wellness being led by Jennifer Olson. We also have wages, compensation, and benefits being led by Patty Ryan, and shared services, family child care networks, and other supports being led by Irana Schaefer. So you will now see a breakout tab, I believe, at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to choose one of those. So I would go ahead and choose which breakout room you would like to join. And we will see you back here at around, let's say, 5:10 Pacific time. You can do the math on what that means for your local time zone, but 5:10 Pacific. And we'll come back as a whole group and we'll hear some learnings from the other breakout groups. Then we'll just close it up and we'll go from there. Looking forward to hearing about all these breakout rooms. I'll be popping into each one of them. Thank you all. Just want to say welcome back and thank you to all of our presenters, facilitators, note takers, people behind the scenes who are working on the Zoom. I just want to, I popped into every one of the breakout groups and was so deeply impressed and honored by everybody that was presenting with such a amazing
I've been listening to
network
a
of knowledge.
webinar, trying to get ideas for.
And so what we're going to do now, though, is I want to make sure that we hear from the other breakout groups, because I'm sure you, like me, were a little jealous that you could only pick one. But we're going to hear from the others. We also recorded every one of the breakout group sessions, and we'll be sharing those so you have them for your records, and you can go through and listen and watch those on your own time. We also took notes, so you'll be able to have those as well. Let's see, we've got about 15 or so minutes left. So if our facilitators who are going to do our quick report outs could keep it fairly short, that would be great. But I'll pass it off to the first session right now, session A. Saw a few great presentations there. So Siobhan, I will toss it over to you.
Great, thanks, Pete. We did have a wonderful session with great information shared by our panelists and also some wonderful engagement and questions from our participants. The key themes running through, we heard from Arkansas, Texas, and YMCA of the East Bay in California. And the common themes running through were really creating different opportunities and pathways for people in early childhood, or not in early childhood, but interested in it, because some of the programs are apprenticeships for high school students, having opportunities to earn while they learn, to gain low or no cost credentials, to have the opportunity to increase their earning capacity, and really as Daryl phrased it, really using a 2-gen strategy for the East Bay program, where the participants in the apprenticeship program are parents of children that are attending the program. So really strong community engagement, partnerships, and also a focus on, if it's not enough to encourage and offer opportunities for folks to get these credentials if we're not going to pay them more. So strategies for increasing wages, increasing reimbursement rates, and really a lot of connectedness across systems, which is something that we always want to see and we know is beneficial at all levels. So I think I'll leave it there because there was just so much to learn. And those are the key themes that I saw. Thanks.
Thank you, Siobhan. No, it was great hopping into your session and seeing the great number of participants, but also the great strategies that are being shared. So thank you. Let's go to the next breakout group, Breakout B, Recruitment, Retention, and Staff Wellness. Jennifer, hello, Jennifer. You could share a few words about your breakout group.
We had panelists from Oklahoma, Nevada, Louisiana, California, and we raced through their incredible presentations. And we had such a lively chat and very, very good questions and people opening up their mics and talking. So we had some of the same themes that Siobhan had. It was very interesting. Innovative ways to improve and retain staff. We looked particularly at mental health, and one of the examples there was actually a substitute pool that could create a sense of wellness, and that you could actually have a job like other people where you could plan to have some time off, which was incredible. We talked about the mental health actually being part of their innovation, in that the mental health consultants were hired and they had the money to do so, to work with the program, the classroom staff, and the children. And of course, they felt that that really, really helped with retention. We kind of moved on to how we recruit and retain, and we looked at apprenticeships and different staffing models, where in California, they were actually doing a model where they had a teacher assistant, teacher aide in the classroom, and they were paid at different levels. But you can imagine having the breadth of that opportunity to have 3 people in the classroom, and that the aide was in training to become an assistant and the assistant to become a teacher. And so, and another thing they did was, of course, an open house where they had people come in and practice and see what it was like to be in that facility. Joe talked about actually training at a level where students at a university and college were trained on their own children, if you would, on the employees' children, and using children from the staff, and to get that whole sense of the incredible workforce opportunities working with young children. Some kind of overarching themes were unique uses of staff and time, and starting small and scaling up. And many of the panelists said, they started small, but then they scaled up for more, and very innovative uses of dollars. So we'll stop there.
Thanks, Jennifer. That's great. All right, we'll move on to wages, compensation, and benefits. Patty.
Hi, Pete.
Hey,
Well,
Patty.
we had 5 actually wonderful panelists. We heard from Ann McSweeney, who from First Children's Finance, who did a lot of context setting, and I think raised some unique and innovative strategies, and also some challenges that really need to be solved. And then we heard from 2 panelists who focused on the issue of pay. One from San Francisco, who passed legislation to implement a compensation initiative designed to raise teacher compensation. And we heard from New Mexico, who implemented a cost estimation model and talked about that, how they went about it, and the professional support supports. And then on the benefits side, we heard from Arizona, who talked about their Childcare Relief Scholarship Program and the benefits offered to the childcare workforce there. And then we heard from Washington, who is providing health insurance for the early childhood workforce. All of the strategies were unique and different and used a variety of funding sources. I can say that the kind of key themes that came out were as you're building whatever it is you're building, implementing what you're implementing to engage the workforce from the ground up, and that they are especially a part of the strategies to lift both wages and benefits. All spoke about how especially in San Francisco and in Washington, how the workforce really made a difference in turning the tide to get their strategies implemented. And also across the panel talked about the need for reaching out, as in Siobhan's breakout cross sectors, but also within partners. And we had very little time to ask questions. We did get to a couple questions and we're able to lift up, but it was just a wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much, Patty. Your group did have the most participants, and not that the other groups weren't equally as important, but it indicates, I think, how important compensation is to addressing the problems with the workforce. So thank you for sharing all of that. And now we'll move on to the last but not least, shared services, family child care networks. Let's see, Rana.
Hi, thank you.
Hello, Rana.
I have this light. Maybe if I turn this off, it'll be better. Yeah.
You look angelic.
I don't know. Is that worse or better? I don't know. But
Yeah,
now I can't see my notes. Now I can't see my notes. Anyways, I can probably remember even at this late hour because I am on the East Coast. So we started out talking about shared services and what that really means and how different it can look in all the different ways. But we kept going back to how important it was to really build up the businesses of the family child care educators, as well as center as well. And you know, building on what Jaleetha had talked about with the business services, because you can't run a business and you can't stay in business if you don't know what you have is a business. So we talked about that, and we had Jennifer Drake from All Our Kin talking about their long-term experience in running staff family child care networks and some amazing outcomes around staff retention and recruitment. And it was very impressive how not only did it really help the economy in Connecticut and New York, because more people stayed in business and more people, there were more slots for children to go to, but it also would really be able to support the educators in getting their degrees and earning more money and building them out of poverty as well. So it served both. And then we also heard from Karen Powell with her pilot, 3-year pilot on their staff family child care network in Louisiana, and how that pilot already in only a few years has really shown a lot of really positive outcomes around all of the basis that you need outcomes in relationships with children and the relationships that the staff have with the providers. And one of the things that she talked about that we really focused on a lot was how they also have a regular meeting, peer meetings between the educators themselves, so that they could really form these relationships and have each other to rely on. And then we heard from Paula Coos from Oklahoma about the Infant Toddler Specialist Network and about shared services in Oklahoma, and how, again, those supports for staff really encompassed coaching and training and other kinds of technical assistance, and helped with, again, the positive relationships and the quality of what was happening in the classrooms and the positive feelings that staff had. So we could have talked for another hour, but you were calling us back to the room. So
yeah, sorry to do that. Thank you, Rana. Really appreciate that overview. So we're almost at time. But I just wanted to thank you all again, like deeply from the bottom of my heart for coming today, especially at this late hour for some. I mean, it's past 5 o'clock here in San Francisco also, but I know that our colleagues in Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands and American Samoa and Hawaii appreciate the flexibility. I know that many of you were tossing around childcare challenges of your own this evening, but I think your participation is indicative of how just important and critical supporting the early childhood profession is now more than ever. So I just really want to thank you. I also think that, this is a time for action. We have unprecedented amounts of new funding to support early childhood programs, increased compensation, et cetera. And I think that this was also a networking opportunity. So please, if you met people, reach out. We'll be sharing some contact information after this meeting. The folks that all presented today presented because they wanted to share what they're doing and how to do it with fidelity, and then you can co-opt it and use it in your own neck of the woods to make it work for you. So please reach out to others. We want to encourage and keep this kind of dialogue going. And I don't want this to be the last event that we do in partnership with our friends in Region 6. Just let me say lastly too that the whole of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Labor, if I can speak for them, are keyed in on early childhood because it's so critical. Because like Jaleetha said, there is no economic recovery without early childhood programs. So I wanted to say that. I also wanted to point out the resource slide that was just on just a second ago. Please visit ACF's webpage. There are tons of great resources there featuring some best practices. Go check it out. And also to my colleague, Lakeisha Pope Jackson, I don't want to put her on the spot, but I wanted to see if she had any last comments to share. I know that she was hopping in and out to some of the breakout groups also. Lakeisha.
Hi, the sun is setting on me here, so sorry about that. But I did get a chance to jump into at least 3 of the breakout rooms, and the conversations were so informative. I'm so glad we were able to do this. Pete, you've done an extraordinary job leading us, and really kudos to you.
Oh, thank you, Lakeisha. I could not have done anything without your team's help, without Department of Labor's help, without the Early Childhood Quality Assurance and Capacity Center buildings help, without so many different folks that helped and stood up today. Thank you to all of our presenters and everybody. Keep up the good work. Spread your light and give somebody a hug today. Thank you all so much for coming.